Well, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again for session number 4 of our Abiding in Christ Free at Last Bible study. It's been a pleasure working with you all, and I pray that this has all been a blessing to you. Today, we're going to start in lesson number 4, and I call this the baggage and faulty definitions part of our study. This is a part of our study that we're going to be looking more closely at some of the ways that we have grown up with and formulated just definitions of how God behaves, and definitions of just life in many ways, and how that has contributed to our baggage, the bags that we carry. We're going to talk about these definitions. Jesus promised us, what was it he promised us? He promised us life, and he promised us life abundantly. Now, we're new creations in Christ Jesus, and so we are in we're in a new life because of his resurrection. We also were crucified with Christ at the cross, and now we are resurrected, spiritually speaking, with him, with a whole new life. And so there's so much of our old life that we're unlearning before we can begin to really fully learn what this abiding life is all about. It's not just about showing up at church every Sunday. It's not just about having a quiet time every morning and reading a devotional. It's not just about the fact that we're out there winning people to Christ. All those things are that is the Christian life. But then we start to grow deeper into this Christian life, and God starts to call us deeper. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves going, wow, I didn't know that was there. I didn't know that I was doing that. I want more. And I don't mean more in terms of more revelation, new revelation. What we're talking about here is new revelation of old truth. And that's a whole different thing there. So let's talk about this life abundantly that Jesus promised. How many of you are at a place in your Christian life where you're going, this isn't so abundant. This isn't feeling like the abundant life. So we're going to talk about that. John 10:10, Jesus says, the thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. That's a loaded part of the verse. Who's the thief? Well, it's the enemy. It's Satan and all of his cohorts who come to steal and kill and destroy. And what is it that they're killing and stealing and destroying in our lives? Well, it's our growth, it's our life in Christ, it's our joy, it's our peace, it's our wisdom, it's our love. That's what he wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He can try to steal, kill, and destroy relationships, jobs, all kinds of things. But Jesus says he has come to that we would have life and have it more abundantly. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What is the abundant life according to us and according to him, according to Jesus? And I'm sorry, I'm still trying to work this out. So here's what I want to look at in your workbook on page 50. I have a list of things called what is my definition of the abundant life? And these are just things that I sort of grew up with, or in my early Christian life. This is what I wanted. This is what I thought I needed in order to be happy. So part of it is happiness. I wanted a godly husband who was, according to everything we were learning in the 70s, we were supposed to be the submissive wives, and we would have a godly husband and he would be the leader of everything. I still believe that. I still believe in that. But we did a lot of damage in our homes trying to achieve that, didn't we? So we wanted a godly leader. I wanted this godly leader. I wanted him to be my spiritual head. At the time that I was thinking about these things, and I was younger and I had young children, and of course I wanted my kids to turn out well. I was involved in a little bit of ministry back then. And so, yeah, I wanted to be useful in ministry. I wanted my life to turn out well. I wanted security, of course. We were not financially secure at that time by any means. I wanted to be able to have all these emotions, under control. I wanted wisdom. That's a noble thing. I wanted to finally get to where all of my relationships with husband and children to be free of conflict. Of course, I didn't want any sickness in my life, naturally. I wanted God to answer all of my prayers. I added a couple here that are maybe not on yours. I wanted to get to a place which is the American dream, where we work and then we retire and then we have a savings account and we live comfortably. That's one of the things. I wanted to be able to do what my parents had done and travel a lot after retirement. These are all things that I looked at as the abundant life. There's nothing wrong with desiring these things, nothing at all. But as God seemed to be asking me, by the time I reached my 40s and had a little life experience under my belt, I felt that he was starting to say, so how's that working out for you? Well, not so well. Not so well. Because you may notice that these are pretty much, all of these things are pretty much that below the line temporal goals, which is exactly what they are. And many of these goals, when you look back at this list, they're based on this, what we have in our country anyway, this American dream. And we've all sort of been conditioned to believe in the American dream. Again, nothing wrong with that. But when we start to confuse Christianity with the American dream, we're going to get a little off track there, because we're going to be looking for the wrong things. And we're going to look today at what God's perception of the American dream, or the abundant life, really is. It's not a bad thing that we're talking about with the American dream, but we cannot get these two ideologies confused. When the American dream goals replace what God's real goals for us are, then we're starting to search and worship things that are strictly worldly goals, designed to bring us comfort, yes, but they may be designed also to rob us of God's real intent for our lives. Suffering is not built into our equation, is it? Not like it is in other countries that are don't have the same privileges that we have in this country. If I were to talk about this particular lesson to the underground church in China, and if they made their own list, it would look quite a bit different than this. It would be like, I want to be able to meet with other Christians without the fear of being imprisoned and tortured. That's survival, keeping out of prison, and at the same time watching many of their loved ones being murdered for their faith, and then having to go on living and having something to eat tomorrow. These might be some of their definitions. They certainly wouldn't be, finally being able to, it's just a whole different sort of mindset that we have in different cultures. So let's just look quickly here. What are God's definitions? In your handouts, I have a list of scriptures, and of course this is obviously not complete, but just look at a couple of these scriptures, thinking of what God's definition of abundant life as a Christian really is. John 4:23 says, "But the hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth." Let me just say something about worship. I had a gentleman who was speaking at our church some years ago, right in the middle of when I was going through my husband's dementia and all of that season. He was from India, and he did a sermon on what worship was, and he used the example of Abraham and Job. And he used the example of Abraham is taking Isaac up to the mountain to offer him as a sacrifice to God. Now you can imagine he's waited 25 years to have Isaac. waited 25 years. It was a miracle. And now suddenly God is asking him, and now I want you to sacrifice him, which is completely not in God's program at all. That was an abomination to him, human sacrifice, obviously. But what does Abraham do? He gets to the foot, he takes his 2 servants, and he takes Isaac, and it gets a distance away, and he sees Mount Moriah, and he tells the servants, you stay here. The lad and I are going up to worship. That's a whole different concept of worship. We get to Job. Job just learns that his entire family has died. After he's prayed his heart out for them every single day, he's up, he's offering sacrifices and praying for his sons and daughters as they are feasting, and he gets the word that everything is gone. They're all gone. And it says he fell on his face and he worshiped. That word worship there in these passages is not the same as our going to church and raising our hands and singing. That's worship. But there's a kind of worship that happens in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of suffering, that's completely different. That name is in the Hebrew shachah, and it means fall face down, fall face down. To worship in spirit and in truth. The Father is seeking such to worship him. That's another level, isn't it? It's another level of Christianity. It's not one that we all look forward to, but I'll tell you, it's a whole different ballgame. There's several verses here. I'm not going to read through them all. One of them I've got marked here is Romans 5:1. It says, therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we also have access by faith into the grace in which we stand. And we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. And then it goes on. We could end right there and go, yeah, yes, let's do that. But then it finishes and it says, and not only that, but we also wait, glory in tribulation, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. Well, okay, that's not what I thought that the Christian life was supposed to be about. Rejoicing, glory in tribulations, glory. This is a whole different level again. I don't know. I'm not sure at many points in my life that I would have welcomed that kind of abundant life. He tells us in 2 Corinthians, he said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And then it goes on to say, Paul says, when I'm weak, then I am strong. And weakness was not a part of my program. What about you? Is getting weaker and weaker a part of your program? Or did you think that God wanted you to just get stronger and stronger? And then he allows all these trials into your life and you're not feeling so strong. I'm a pretty strong woman. I reached a point of weakness when my husband was sick where I was just like, if you don't breathe for me this morning, I'm not going to be able to breathe. But that's where his strength came in. That's where he took over. That's where he took over. So here's God's program. I have it written down there. It's rivers of living water. It's peace with God. It's access by faith into grace. It's rejoicing in hope of the glory of God. It's never hunger, never thirst. That means spiritually. You're free indeed. There's rest for your soul, for your mind, your will, and your emotions. There's sufficient grace for everything you need. It's his strength for our weakness. He says for us to, when we're with him, to will and to do of his good pleasure. His good pleasure. That's something completely different. There's wisdom, revelation in the knowledge of him. In the knowledge of him, not just the knowledge of our doctrine or our creed, the knowledge of him, not just having verses memorized out of the Bible so that you can spew them out whenever the occasion arises. It's knowledge of him. It's enlightened understanding. There's the hope of his calling, his glorious inheritance, exceeding greatness of his power, strengthened with might in our inner man. in our inner man or woman, and that he will dwell in our hearts, to know his width, length, breadth, depth, height, filled, again, as I said in the earlier, to be filled with all the fullness of God. And here again, another verse that just, kind of takes my breath away. Paul says, I want to know him. And the power of his resurrection, oh yes, definitely. And the fellowship of sufferings. It's a package deal. To be conformed to his death, to be conformed to his image. These are all part of his description of the abundant life. So here we are. These are what we call above the line things. These things are all, what are they? Changes within our deepest inner self. And they are happening as we are dying to the old self and as his life is becoming more real in us. They're the new filters that we're going to start to come to know and recognize and understand. This is a new filter. It's a new filter. As things come into our lives, whatever they are, instead of thinking with the old filter of, well, I'm just not happy, this is not making me happy, we will begin more and more to think through this filter. How's this going to glorify Jesus? How is what is happening to me going to make his strength perfect in my weakness in this situation? How do I feel about that? Well, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, nah, and other times I go, whatever. God, leave no stone unturned in order to make me conformed into your image. That's a whole different process there. So really, are his plans and definitions really that different than ours? Well, not really. I mean, he desires our happiness. He does. And he does desire, of course, that our husbands are godly. That's written. And that they will be spiritual leaders. Yes. And he does want our children to grow up well. That's all a part of his definition too. And he does love it when we're involved in ministry and serving. But these things can only be accomplished. These things can only be accomplished as he lives his life in us and flows out from us as living water. What if we have a marriage that is not so great? What if our husbands aren't spiritual leaders of our homes? How do we deal with that? What are we supposed to be doing? Psalm 37:4 says, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Now, delight here, it doesn't mean being all pumped up and happy. It means to be soft and pliable and teachable. That's a different concept, isn't it? The desires of our heart means the requests and the petitions of our heart. The things that we desire means that we are soft before him. We're pliable, like the clay that he says that we are, and we're teachable. So we tend to see the last part of that verse, but the first part is what counts. Delight. When our delight is in him, we desire what he desires. We love what he loves. We're passionate about what he is passionate about. Those around us, maybe we have people that we know that we're praying for. They're gonna, as we're growing into this, as this is becoming more and more a part of our very inner self, our character, we will notice that people that we've been praying for, maybe they're going to start to sense something about us that they want, because they sense the Spirit of the living God operating in us, and they may begin to come to us and seek out, what does this mean? What is different about your life? I go to church. I read my Bible. I'm praying. What's different about your life? And it's because you have discovered these precious things, the truth about the abundant life. And it may mean that they're watching us. Maybe they are watching us go through a difficult patch in our lives, and that they're seeing how we're handling it. Not that they're going to see that we're handling it with all the strength and with no emotional trauma and pain. The thing is, we don't want to fake fine. And they know that. They sense the difference between saying, well, everything works together for good, and trying to cheer everybody up. Sometimes they get to see us when we're tanking. Sometimes they get to see us when we're falling on our face and not doing very well. And they get to see, yeah, we go through those times. but then we come back out of there with a deeper walk and a different trust in God than we had before. There's a sweetness. There's a sweetness in this kind of trust, and God is building it into us through everything that we face. People recognize it. People see it, and that's what they're watching. They don't want to necessarily see that I've handled everything without a struggle and a glide through it all, with a halo around our head. But they need to see that in the struggle, that we're continuing to turn our little tear-stained faces to Jesus, and that because of that, there comes an inner peace that's visible. It's visible to the world. And we don't always understand is that his methods and his ways of teaching us these things and achieving them, they're often very different from our own, and that his timing is impeccable. It is impeccable. I call this God getting out of my box. I've had God in this little box. This is how he's supposed to be. This is how he's supposed to behave. The Bible says this, and so I expect this. Sometimes he performs and he acts in a way that is completely different from what I'm used to expecting. I call it getting into his stride. When you get into his stride, you become less anxious about all of us. A couple of these verses always strike me when he says, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. It's a well-known and loved passage. We quote it all the time. But when we are in the throes of a crucible, a life-changing experience, it will become more real than ever. And when John, my husband, was sick, I remember asking Jesus once, because it was just like every day it was a bad report. Every day it was worse than the rest. I was losing my husband one brain cell at a time. And every day was new and it was different and it was harder than the day before. And I would cry out to him. I just remember crying out and I just said, it seems like you're not trying to make me stronger. This trial is not making my faith stronger. I thought trials were supposed to make us stronger. It almost feels, God, like you're deliberately tearing down my faith. And here's what I heard. And I mean, it was distinctly in my heart. And I heard him just say, child, I'm not trying to make you strong. I want you weak. My strength is being perfected in your weakness. And I'm telling you, it left me on my face. It taught me that there are some things in life that simply have no answers, just have no answers. Some things in life that aren't going to get fixed. Having that soft, pliable, teachable attitude is a precious, precious thing in his sight. Oh, if we can get a hold of that, we will go a long ways toward being able to live a life that is way, way above the line. Psalm 51, 16 and 17 talks about what Christ, what he sees as precious. And it says, the sacrifices of God are a broken and contrite heart. Well, that's where he was taking me. I was strong. I was always strong. And he was taking me through this process where I had no pride left in my own strength. I couldn't rely on my own strength any longer. And it left me broken. Brokenness is priceless. Broken people are humble people. Your last handout, let me see, find it here. There's a handout in your book that I read years ago, written by Harry Ironside, and it's beautiful. He says, it's on page 54, and he says, God is not looking for brilliant men, is not depending upon eloquent men, is not shut up to the use of talented men in sending his gospel out into the world. God is looking for broken men and women who have judged themselves in the light of the cross of Christ. When he wants anything done, he takes up men who have come to the end of themselves and whose confidence is not in themselves, but in God. This goes right along with Psalms 51, verses 16 and 17. This is where he was taking me. It's where he wants to take all of us. If we are soft and pliable and teachable in his hands. You can also add Philippians 3:10 to that. And I read the first part of this and my heart leaps. What does that say? Yes, I want to know him. I want to know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings. Not so much. Not so much the fellowship of his sufferings. See, I've read through the Bible many times, and that verse never meant that much to me until I was in the middle of a crucible. You would have to do your own studies through the New Testament to find all that these things really mean. But one verse that always struck me was that it says, Jesus learned obedience through the things which he suffered. That's in Hebrews 5, verse 8. Why did he have to learn obedience? Why did he have to suffer to learn obedience? Wasn't he God? See, these are questions that I don't know about you, but I grew up thinking these things. I didn't just sit there and listen to a pastor. I was like, wait a minute, what does that one mean? But Jesus learned it in order to model it, because that's exactly the way we learn it, through suffering. And I'm going to just leave it to you at this point to sort of take up that subject in your own devotions, especially if you're going through a really rough patch right now. This is priceless for you. What is it that you're learning? What kind of things are you learning in your suffering? Not that you're just going to bear up and get through it and somehow survive it. We don't want to be survivors, folks. We want to be overcomers. Jesus wants us as overcomers, but overcomers are those who have suffered. And I'll tell you what, it's a worthwhile study to take up. Now, the last time we met, I'd sent you home with some handouts to work on. And the first one is called Faulty Definitions of God. And I hope you were able to work through that particular, one and came out with some interesting insights into your faulty definitions of God. These come under the belief systems. We develop a belief system based on these exact faulty definitions. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm kind of fumbling around here this morning. Let me find that in my, okay, here it is. In my handouts from last week, I was looking in the wrong place. So it lists some of the ways that we perceive God through the lens, through the filter that we've been viewing him, and how these things have impacted how you relate to God today. So let's look at that handout. There's the emotionally absent God, the God of judgment, the distant God, the explosive God, the dead God, manipulating God, the confusing God, the materialistic God. He wants more money and more money and more money, hand the plate around the room. The preoccupied God, well, he must be really busy. And of course, he's in charge of the entire ends of the earth and the universe. He's a God of partiality. He helps others, but not me. Other people seem to be special to him, and their lives are going well. Mine's not. The performance God. Yeah, the physically abusive God, the untrustworthy God, the verbally abusive God, which I think I saw that. I see all the wrong I've done, and when I read the scriptures, I just have to close the Bible because all it talks about is what I've done wrong. The overpowering God, the passive God, and the lying God. These are things that he began to allow really rough things in my life. And by the time I went through this in 2004, it was the other handout that's right next to that is the Who is God handout. I felt that at that point that I really did love him. And I did. I loved him with everything that was in me. Really, everything that was in me, I loved him. But I still had these faulty definitions. And when I began to take that test on page 39 about who is God, that was like, whoa, that was an eye opener, because I thought I had a positive and a strong perception of him, and I loved him. But after teaching and mentoring women for about 10 years at that point, he started allowing these really, really hard things into my life. And by the time I took that test, I did see that in my worst moments, in my worst moments, when I was being attacked by the enemy, or when my life felt like it was just tanking, I would resort to one of those faulty definitions, which revealed that I had been carrying around a whole lot of junk in my soul, root rot. And I'd been carrying that around for a long, long time. And what my particular issue finally boiled down to, as I've said, was I had a basic system of unbelief based on my theology of reward punishment. If I was good and behaving well, he would reward me. And if I was failing and not behaving so well, he would have to punish me. And I would have to get my act all cleaned up before I could go and approach him again. And he just revealed there was a whole lot of root rot down there, and it had to go. You know, I remember thinking, when I knew that he was starting to deal with some of these things and reveal them to me, right in the middle of going through this with my husband, I remember thinking, okay, but can we do this another time? I mean, can you see what I'm going through here right now, Lord? Can we do this? And he's like, no. Right in the middle of it is when you're going to learn it, when you're right smack in the middle of it. So here we go. Then I was like, okay, let's go. And then he began to really, really teach me. So in the handout, Who is God? I had asked you to fill in the blanks without thinking a lot about it, just sort of off the top of your head. And this is how you feel in your worst moments, not when everything's going well, not when you're feeling his presence and it's peaceful and wonderful, not when you're on the mountaintop, okay? Oswald Chambers at one time said, the mountaintop experience doesn't last. You still have to go down into the valley of demons. and that's exactly true. It's when these deeper thoughts are revealed is when you're really going through a difficult time. And I realize, and I do have people that I've taught before, and I realize that not everyone goes there. I realize that not everyone does that. I've discipled women, some women who would be shocked at this particular test, and they've said, I never had bad feelings about God. I've been a Christian since I was 7 years old. He's just been my father. I just love him. I've never had those thoughts. And they didn't, that we could tell. And maybe not, but it's commendable if you haven't, but more often than not, in our worst moments, we may find that we don't always have perfectly wonderful thoughts about God. Now, if you're using this material to sort of take somebody else through a discipleship, try to refrain from assuming that having these kinds of inner dialogues with God are evidence of a lack of faith. Okay, some of the most powerful men in the Bible, men of faith in the Bible, and just even in our lifetime, have gone through seasons of doubt and unbelief. I had a woman recently. I've known her for years, and we've done some discipleship together. She's been in Bible studies, and real solid Christian woman. And man, she wrote to me not too long ago, and she said, "I'm having a crisis of my faith." And I mean, she was in the middle of a crisis of her faith. So it was like, oh, do I want to even go here? But we've been working together, and you have to respect people where they are. You have to trust that Jesus knows exactly where they are. He didn't fall off of his throne when he heard the news that somebody was having a crisis of faith. So many of us do go here. Many of us do. And it's important to understand that this is part of the process. So you can see how your answers on the chart reflect your faulty definitions, can't you? Can you see how these things will keep you on that cycle that we went through with the inner outer man, life's worst hurts, and then how it made you feel, and then what you did to try to change yourself, and then how you coped when you couldn't change your situation or yourself. You can see all of these things now, what we're talking about here, all of these things that they all contribute to this cycle. We're going around and around and around this cycle over and over and over with these same patterns. Now, some of the common answers that we see here are how some of our questions based on our worst moments, how they might look. And this is just, I was once leading a very wealthy, very nationally successful man through this material at his request. I don't usually do that, but he was having some marriage issues, and his wife, I was talking to her, and so she asked if we would meet together. And I was amazed by what he wrote. Many of his answers matched what you see here. So success and wealth and power and reputation had not changed at all the basic pain that he experienced in his life. And this chart that we're talking about, it revealed it. It surprised him too, because he saw himself as a good, nice Christian man. But from there, after going through this material, he was able to go back then to root rot in the chart and to see what was really going on down in this root. So you can see from this material how Mike has really devised it and set it up in a way that as we go through some of these charts and starting to identify some of these things, you can really start to see it gel in a form a real picture of what it is that we've really believed when we thought we believed only the right things, the things that we're supposed to believe, the church mandated things. And this is when change really starts to happen. Now we're going to look at another chart on your handouts. It's called My Needs and God and 2 Corinthians. Let's see, I'm going to find out here. My Needs, God, and whoops. In 1 Corinthians 13. So I've got this broken down so we can just look at some of these separately. This is on page 52. Now, My Needs, God in 1 Corinthians, we're going to fill in the first section, what our perceived needs are. So some of mine were, of course, love, acceptance, and security. Yes, that's our basic needs. That's just basic. All of us can add that. Now you can add your own. What do you perceive your own needs to be? Assurance, total commitment, things like that. These are things that I would have put in mind, plus a whole lot of others. And then we can, fit whatever you perceive to be my needs. This is different from my problems. These are what I perceive to be my needs. And then the second part of that chart in the God part, you're going to list what you had written down as some of your faulty definitions, or what you had written down as who God is, how you perceive God in your worst moments, and how you sometimes feel about his activities in your life. And here are some of those. You're going to have your own. Don't just copy these, even unless they completely fit, but this is your profile. So you're going to make this personally. So here we have who our perception, our filter of who God is. Where is he? So you go back to this one. I need approval. Where is he? I never know when he's going to get tired of my failures. He wants to control me. Did I do the right thing? Did I make the right decisions? Has my giving been enough? He loves those who never rebelled more than me. I'm telling you, this was big. I was a rebel. I was a rebel growing up. It just seemed to be written into my DNA to just challenge everything and rebel against everything. And then as I became a Christian, and I knew other Christians who just really never colored outside the lines and did it all right, and I would see their lives going well and my life going not so well, and I would think, I actually thought that he loves them because they didn't rebel. He's keeping a list. Who's keeping a list here? Well, the enemy is, not God. I must do everything right. That's a church thing. What does he really want? I don't know what he wants. Am I in his will? He helps others, but not me. I'm serving him. I'm teaching, I'm going to church, I'm praying every day. I'm praying every day and reading my Bible. Why are bad things still happening? When is the other shoe going to drop? Man, I heard that before. He may take my health just to get my attention. That's a spiritual myth that he would do that. I will get what I deserve. Well, if I got what I deserved, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be here. I can never be good enough. Have you ever grown up hearing that? He promises one thing and he gives another. Well, pretty heavy stuff there. So let's just turn to 1 Corinthians 13 and let's just read it. This passage and also Galatians 5:23, you can read it on your own, but this is basically what it says. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, love does not boast, love is not proud, love does not dishonor others, love is not self-seeking, love is not easily angered, love keeps no wrongs or records of wrongs, love does not delight in evil but rejoices with the truth, love always protects, love always trusts, love always hopes, love always perseveres, love never fails. Well, I'll tell you what, in the 70s, my first husband and I went to all the popular marriage retreats. They were all over the place. The whole subject was always on how to be submissive to your husband. And if you're submissive to your husband, then he's going to grow into the mighty man of God that you hope he will be. And we were given, there were a whole lot of books being written, and we were given detailed instructions on how to submit and shown that this is God's idea of love. And somehow 1 Corinthians 13 was the passage of scripture. We're supposed to eventually be able to follow these things and have happy marriages. If we were good Christian women, we would go home and we would now begin to strive to be these things to our husbands or in our marriage or as a parent. I mean, all the books were coming out. All the self-help books were coming out during those years. And some of them were really good. Some of them were really, really bad. But so I would go home and I'd go, okay, I'd get up in the morning. Okay, God, I'm going to be patient today. I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to be patient. Well, that happened until I got out of bed. I'm going to be kind. Well, maybe for the first hour. I mean, this is how we were sort of being trained in those days. Maybe not everybody, but at least in my version of my Christian life, that's what was happening. And I'll tell you what. I think a lot of us got set up for failure. And a lot of us who were doing that ended up getting divorced because it didn't work. And it wasn't working for us. And our expectations, the God that we had in our box was way too demanding. We couldn't do it. We were not able to do it. So here was my definition of 1 Corinthians 13. Kathy is patient. Kathy is kind. Kathy does not envy. Kathy's not proud. Kathy does not boast. Kathy does not dishonor others. Kathy's not self-seeking. She's not easily angered. Kathy keeps no record of wrongs. Okay, let's just go on down that list. This was how I viewed 1 Corinthians 13. This is how we were supposed to be behaving. I'm not going to bring up the past again. All right, how's that working out for you? I know you can't, okay? Only he can. This is not a passage of scripture, people, that God threw in just to make us feel guilty, just to make us feel like we're, inadequate losers at this. This passage is who he is. This passage has unfortunately been turned into New Testament law for many people because we are working so hard to get there, but it's not attainable. It's not attainable. So after many tries and many failures, we finally give up, don't we? We finally give up. And this was part of the downfall of my marriage and many of us. I could not submit enough to make him happy. And he wasn't getting the respect that he needed from me because I didn't respect him. I wasn't getting the love that he was commanded to give to me because we both came into the marriage carrying our bag of expectations and how he was supposed to fill all those needs, and then it would just fall into place. It was a no-win situation. This was a no-win situation. So let's read this passage again. Let's look at what it really means. God is patient. Let's turn it. God is patient. God is kind. God is not proud. God doesn't boast. God doesn't dishonor others. He's not self-seeking. He's not easily angered. God keeps no record of wrongs. God does not delight in evil. God rejoices with truth. God always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. God's love never fails. God is love. This is from Galatians 5:22 and 23. God is peace. God is faithful. God is gentle. God is kind. God is humble. God is meek. God is self-controlled. This is what this means. When we grasp this truth, it's going to change everything. It's going to change everything, because what you're going to do when you wake up in the morning, then you're going to say, I'm going to be having this discussion with somebody, maybe my husband or somebody, and there's a chance, God, that I'm going to blow it. I'm going to lose my patience, but you're patient. Christ in me is patient. I don't have to try to be patient. I just have to rely on his patience. He's kind. He's love. He's love. I can't love that person. I say this to him all the time. God, I don't think I'm not capable of loving that person. Come and be my patience. It's like I heard Mike say that first time I heard him, and I just was like, whoa, that's big. That's big. Jesus, come and be my patience today. Jesus, come and be my wisdom. Jesus, come and be my kindness, my gentleness. Come and be my meekness. I'm not meek. Have you ever tried to be meek? Oh, you guys, this is big stuff. Now, on your next handout in your book here, in order for me to have this made real in my life, what I do is I start to formulate prayers where I can speak it out loud to put it into practice. And I don't want to just show that we're supposed to look at these things. I want to try to give examples in my reality, how actually to live this life that he's showing us. As I said, it's called the exchange life. It's about choosing truth and refusing lies. Every time we choose truth, we die to self. Every time we choose truth over the lies that we've been hearing all of our lives, a little of self dies. It's a choice that we learn to make. Every time we choose truth over lies, his inner life within us begins to grow. This is the process. We all love to talk about spiritual growth, but all spiritual growth is it means dying to our perceived needs, desires, goals, our images, our kingdoms, the things that we have set out, and allowing his life to grow within us deeper and deeper. And when this happens, here's what happened to me. I started falling deeper and deeper in love with him. I started falling deeper and deeper in love with him. That's just the natural way that it works. So let's look at some of the simple ways right now that we can apply this on page 53. These are just some of the ways to change the direction of our thoughts. Just, taking our thoughts from over here and just turning them back onto him. And these are things that will help when you're starting to experience some of this baggage as it's surfacing, because it's going to surface as you're going through this particular process. So here's some things that the way that I have learned to just speak it out. I can say, according to 1 Corinthians 13, God, I believe that you are patient, and I have no patience right now with this situation. And I'm once again feeling so inadequate. I choose now to exchange my lack of patience for your infinite, never-ending patience. And I thank you that this is truth and I can walk in it right now. Here's some more on page 53. When an offense comes your way and you want to react, hold on just a minute. And you want to react, excuse me for doing that. You just ask God. I ask him, give me 10 seconds to pause. Just give me 10 seconds and to remember 1 Corinthians 13. And that God doesn't take offense and he doesn't react in anger. So I would speak out loud. This is how I do it. Jesus in me was not offended by that remark. So I don't have to be. And I choose not to be offended. Jesus in me, Christ in me is not angry at that. I don't have to be because he's not in me. I don't have to be. Now, when you're tempted to return to something that you've been struggling with, such as an addiction or something you can speak out loud from Galatians 5:23, you could just say, Christ in me, Jesus in me, he's not addicted to anything. I don't have to be. As you read through 1 Corinthians 13, you can really achieve or allow the living, active word of God to change you from the inside out, to conform you into the image of God. You can make statements or declarations out loud, such as this: God, I believe that you're patient, kind, gentle, long-suffering. And I'm not. I'm keeping these things, I'm holding these things against people, and I'm exchanging it now for you because your patience is never failing, unfailing. Now, when someone offends you or insults you, you can say, here's one thing I'll just talk briefly. When my husband got dementia, and he never did this before that, but when he got dementia, his personality changed. And I mean, he could slam me hard and say horrible things to me. And you know, typically a gentle, kind person, unlike myself, would go, well, he's got dementia, he didn't mean it. But no, I had to, you know, all of the buttons that he could push in years gone by, they were still there. So I would, you know, immediately take offense. One time I just said, okay, God, we're gonna put this into practice. Put this into practice. Teach it to me. So we're driving along, and he said, he came out with this abrupt, horrible thing that he said to me. And I just remember sort of turning my face away, and under my breath, I just said, thank you, Jesus, that you will take that hit for me in my place. I could just see between me and John, there was Jesus, and the insult hit him instead of me. I can't tell you what that has done for me. Thank you that you took that hit in my place. And I turned around and we kept driving, and there wasn't even the hint. There wasn't even a hint that the thing had offended me. Wow. Now this is something, love this. I just love this. I got it from a book called The Rest of the Gospel, really good book. And he called it the holy but. Okay, you can see through the process that we're exchanging our thoughts and our feelings and our will for his. And on that same handout, you're going to see on page 53, one other little exercise that I find is helpful. It's what this author called the holy but. Now, the unholy but sounds like this. I know that he's working all things together for my good, but you don't know how bad my situation is. Nothing good can possibly come out of all of this. That's an unholy but. But the holy but, it's just flipping it around. So you would say, my life is as bad as it has ever been, and I'm confused, and I'm fearful of the outcome. But I know and I believe that God is going to take something out of this mess, and he's going to work it together for my good and for his glory. Be glorified, God, in your plan for my life. Again, whoa, this is huge. It changes everything. This is not some Pollyanna positive thinking exercise. It's life-changing because it's truth. It's truth against lies. Psalm 77, 1 through 10, if you read that, you can see David is just, he's crying out to God. He's listing everything. Just, here it is, here it is. This is everything that's going wrong in my life. And in verse 11, he turns it around and he says, but God. Oh, huge stuff. As I've mentioned before, we've all heard the glass half empty, glass half full analogy that defines our perspectives on life. And as I think I said before, I was a glass half empty person. I preferred to think of myself as a realist. I wasn't a negative person, and I'm still, what I would probably call a realist or a pragmatist maybe, but reality is pretty grim at times, and just being a realist can really take us to a pit of despair. Walking around in oblivion, on the other hand, with our heads in the sand, proclaiming that we're not going to look at reality, we don't have to look at that, we're just going to be happy, happy, happy. That's not healthy either. Neither one of those is a healthy way to live. One day I heard those words, as I said, why be either one? Why not be the cup overflowing? And that was an answer to both. So it's a choice that I can make. I can make the choice, not to be happy, 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 and not to be negative, 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 but to say, I want to be a cup overflowing, which just simply means his life, his living water, constantly bubbling up and showing me the reality of his life, the reality of how he did the life. So again, what we're learning here, they're just little tweaks in our thinking, and these little tweaks in our thinking, they're going to make all the difference in how we view and how we live in the real life world. Well, as Mike Wells said, we learn that we're saved and we're not going to hell, but we need to learn how to live in the daily hell. And for some of us, we're living in that daily hell right now, and it's pretty difficult. And these are just little ways to try to flip this thing around so that we're seeing it through his filter, his lens, which is replacing this old filter. That everything that comes into our lives is filtered through something. It's filtered through our past. It's filtered through our negative, every bad identity message. But he's saying, let it be filtered through me now. This is the new filter. Not, these things are not easy, but they're possible, because he says it, you guys, he says it. With God, all things are possible. And a lot of times we sort of look at that verse and we go, not feeling it so much. Just real quick, I want to read this to you on page 54. It's another handout. There's a couple of handouts here that are very valuable. They've been very helpful to me. The first one, or the one on page 54, is talking about the same author, I think, that did The Holy But. He wrote this when he got cancer, and he said, God spoke to me concerning my union with him during my most difficult physical trial to date. In 1994, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. I said, what's going on, Lord? What's this all about? And he began to minister to me. And I sensed his voice saying, nothing's changed. I already knew you had cancer. The only thing that has changed is that you found out what I knew. According to my son-in-law, doctor, I had probably had this cancer quite a while because it had metastasized from my colon to my liver. But God had more things to say to me. He said, nothing has changed, because I've always loved you, and I'm loving you right now, and I will continue to love you. And he said this, you're going to get everything done that I want you to get done. That's what I heard in my spirit. I spent a couple of days in the hospital convalescing and thinking about these things and seeking the Lord about them. And after a while, it's as if the question arose within me from him. Now, where are you going to live? Are you going to live in my body has cancer? Or are you going to live in the spirit? I'm going to live in the spirit, I replied. And God showed me again what it meant to be in union with him. And he said to me, impressing upon my spirit, who are you in union with? I'm in union with you, I answered. Well, who am I? You are the uncreated one. You are before time. and you are after time is over. And that's the internal conversation I was having with the Lord. When you and he talk like that, you know to whom you are talking and from whom you are hearing. That's right. That's who I am. And you're joined to me, aren't you? Yes. So that means you don't have an end either. You're part of my family. I said to myself, that's who I am in union with. And cancer can't touch that. Cancer can't touch the real me or him in me. Outside, I may have cancer, but inside, I have the living God with whom I am one. Is that not the most beautiful thing you have ever read? Whatever you're going through today, God is asking those things. Who are you in union with? Has this thing changed me? Has it changed my attitude towards you? Has it changed the way I love you? Has it changed anything? No. So these are the ways that he's working this thing out in me, molding me. I feel sometimes like I'm a piece of dough, and he's sort of kneading these things into me and changing me from the inside out. I could never change myself. I could never achieve that kind of change. And I'm so thankful that he's the one that does it all. So I pray that this is a place where you find some real help here today. Page 55, there's another one of my favorite past writings from A.W. Tozer. You can read that on your own. Next week, we're going to be talking about, I call it whose voice, and we'll be talking about some of the spiritual warfare that comes against us and whose voice are we listening to. Michael Wells said, we only hear two voices as a Christian, the voice of the shepherd and the voice of the butcher of the sheep. And that really, again, had a real impact on me. So next week, we'll be in lesson 5. And again, I want to thank you for joining in with this Bible study. And I pray that it's really ministering some healing and some excitement and some goodness. Thanks a lot.